Alright, today we'll be tearing down a Suzuki TS185. We'll be pulling the top end apart, the head, the cylinder, the piston, pull the clutches, kickstarter assembly, the stator assembly on the other side. So the first thing we're going to do is pull that head, and we've got 4 head bolts here. And these are a specialty bolt, so you want to make sure that you keep track of these so you're not having to go out and buy new ones. They may not even make these anymore. So we've got lock washer and a washer on each one of these. And then we've got 2 holes here for your spark plug. So pull that off. That is what the dome looks like. You want to make sure that's clean of any debris. You've got your cylinder head. This is your head gasket here. Your base gasket is underneath your cylinder. So pull that off. We can now slide that cylinder off. There's nothing else that holds that on, so you want to make sure that those are torqued down the way they should be. You got your base gasket here. We've already pulled carburetor off here. You want to inspect that piston there, and if you're going back together, put new rings in there. You can hone that cylinder if that's what it needs. This one may just need a hone. It's not even scored up at all, but I can always use a hone. To get that piston off there, I like to take a pick, 90-degree angle. You can use a small screwdriver too, but get in behind that circlip there and just kind of pry it. There's a little groove right there on that piston that you can get in beside that circlip and pull it out there. Then you can just take, a lot of times you can use your finger to push it out. Sometimes it's just a little bit tighter than that. Just needs a little bit of persuasion there. If you're really having to beat on it, then I'd say you've got more issues than just a top end, but it's pretty common for these to have to tap about like that on it to remove it. So you've got your bearing in here. Always want to replace that when you're redoing a top end. And then going back together, you've got your bearing back in there, you've got your pin back in there. Take this clip, slide it in this way, and then I take a screwdriver or a pick, just kind of use it to push it back into that groove. Make sure it's in that groove. Make sure that your rings aren't lined up straight up and down. That'll create a leak. Make sure the arrow or the dot on your piston is on the exhaust side. So that is rebuilding the top end on one of those. Not a whole lot to it. Make sure you replace your gaskets there. Next, we're going to move to the clutch assembly. We're going to pull this clutch cover here. We're going to remove this kickstarter lever. A 12mm bolt to pull that out. And it looks like we actually have to turn this one to get the bolt all the way out. So actually, yeah. There's your Kickstarter there. I like to take and put that bolt back in there so we know where it's at. Now these fill-ups can be a bit of a challenge, especially on these older motorcycles. So I take what is called an impact driver here. This is the Magneto brand. And just take one of these, and they're kind of on a tapered, so when you turn it, when you take a hammer and slam on it, it'll turn that screw and twist it out at the same time. So I've done that with all the bolts on this, but that's what you do, and you just kind of turn it in the direction you're wanting to go. Once they're all loosened up, I like to grab an impact here, 3/8 impact, and just zip them off quick. It goes a lot quicker, but a lot of times just doing this to begin with will strip these bolts out or round the heads off. Alright, now I like to take a rubber mallet then. And we are able to get it broke free. That gasket sometimes can hold us up. But take a little bit of pressure. You can just kind of pull anywhere on it to have a little bit of pressure in there. Then once you're able to get your fingers in behind there, you can even use a putty knife to get in behind there and kind of pry it open. And then we're able to get that cover off. So this clutch pack assembly looks like it's in great condition. This gasket you'll want to replace when you're going back together. Here's your clutch pack assembly. And your Kickstarter gear here. Now to pull this clutch apart, I take a hook like this, and this isn't a very common clutch style, but you can just kind of lift up, and then I take another pair of pliers, and we'll pull these pins out. And then do that to each one of them. Most of them will have most clutches, obviously not the TS's, this model, will have, these will be bolts instead of springs, so you're not having to do this style. And they're a whole lot easier going back together, but I'm showing you how to do this so that you can do it yourself. You're not having to take it in and pay in labor. Got one more here. You can use a 90-degree angle pick too, that may even work better. But now those are all off, now we're able to lift this cover off here. And that's what it looks like underneath. Now these springs are going to stay in place. And what you're going to do is grab a flat screwdriver. No, I think you'll be able to see that there, but I'll try turning it a little bit more. I don't know if that's any better, but take a flat screwdriver and a hammer and flatten. This is a keeper here. And that keeps this bolt from unscrewing. And then this will just pull right off there. We'll have a rod going all the way through that bolt there. I'm going to turn this motor the way that it was so we're not losing pieces. Now we take, this is a 7/8 socket. I'm taking a hold of my finger so that that clutch doesn't spin, and we can take that off of there. I like to make sure it's loose, and then what I do is put everything back together just to keep everything in one piece. Now if you're replacing plates, which these plates look to be in great condition, we can measure them, but you can just replace them right here. You don't even have to pull that clutch basket. So that nut that I just took apart there, you don't even have to pull that to replace these plates. Friction plates most commonly wear out. Steel plates a lot of times will warp, and that's why they get replaced. Friction plates are generally more expensive. Occasionally these springs will wear out or break as well, so you want to replace those. Going back together, you want to make sure this nut goes back on there. You want to make sure you take a screwdriver and bend this keeper back up just the way that you found it. So going back together now, now that we got that nut off, now this is not, you want to make sure if you're rebuilding this clutch pack, you get that nut back on there, but we're just pulling this clutch basket. So and you can do the same thing with you can stick your pick down in there and grab those springs. And I won't do it on all of them because it's kind of time consuming, but just take it up like this. And then you can see that there's a groove, and it really doesn't matter which groove you put it in, as long as it goes in one of them. Then you take and you slide this pin all the way through. Whoop. And having that all, you're not going to have this problem because more than likely you're going to have that nut on there before you do this. So when I'm pulling up, it's pulling that whole clutch pack up with it. So lift it up enough to get this pin through there. And then so it might be easier with a 90-degree plier, or a 90-degree pick. But then slide these back through there and set them in a groove, and you're all set. So we're just going to pull that off. I'll work on that clutch basket another time. But spring will come with it, and it's grooved back in there. Make sure that those teeth are good on there, sitting on that gear. Same thing on this clip here. Or this keeper, flatten it. You want to replace these whenever you're doing that. You want to replace those keepers. They're not very expensive. This is a 24mm nut on this one. And this is going directly onto your crankshaft. So you can just hold your crankshaft, make sure it doesn't spin, pull that off of there. That gear will come off. You've got a Woodruff key there. Make sure you don't lose that. And your Kickstarter gear there. Now what we can do on this is pull this plastic piece out and loosen this spring. Now I don't think, a lot of these models you got to pull the crankshaft or the Kickstarter gear off from the other side, but you just lift that spring off there to take that tension off and unhook it from the bottom. And you've got that plate on there as well. So make sure that you keep those parts together for going back together. Now you've got your shift drum here. I'm going to use the impact driver on that. You want to be a little bit careful doing that so you don't hit it too hard and break pieces. Loosen that there. I'm just going to loosen all these since we're here. These you wouldn't have to do, even to split the case. You wouldn't have to loosen these. All right, all those are loosened. I'm going to go ahead and pull those here quick. That just exposes that bearing there. Got that pin that sits down in there. We've got a 12mm here, kind of holds that shift detent into place and spring loaded. All right, now we should be able to pull this. Well, that shifter isn't off the other side, but this will just come right off as soon as that shifter is off the other side. It'll just slide out this way. We've got a detent there. Take a small flat screwdriver, pull this snap ring. And that looks like it actually holds that shift drum, so I'm glad that we pulled that off. Or that shift drum would be a challenge getting out the other side. And you can see there, we dropped a pin through there. We'll pull that when we tip that motor over. All right, I'm gonna flip this over. A couple pieces are gonna come out, some oil. All right, the shifter here, 10 millimeter to remove that. Make sure there's no play on these shifters. This one's got a lot of play, so shifter's bad on this and the shift shaft. And that's a pretty common problem. I believe I've loosened all these up as well with the impact driver. Should be able to just pull this off quick. Slide this cover off. Now your shift or your clutch assembly there, maybe try to set that back on there. Pack, I told you that there was a rod that went through there, and it is adjustable. And this it looks like it's stripped out, but I'll work on this. But you can adjust this clutch assembly here. I like to show you how to adjust that. So I got this Phillips screw out. This is sealed really good. You wouldn't generally use a screwdriver to... Oh, duh. All these got to come out. All right, those 4 Phillips are off. Now, to adjust the clutch on this TS185, we've already obviously got, a cable was broken, so we just pulled it off. Take and loosen this 10 millimeter nut here, and then you got a flat screw in the middle there. Take a screwdriver. What I do is turn it until it's got tension on it, until it's got pressure on it, and then I back it off about 1/8 of a turn, or about 1/8 of a turn. That way, if you have constant pressure on it, your gauge is not going to work properly. It's not going to engage and disengage properly. So you want to make sure you have it the correct tightness there. Loosen or tighten this lock nut up, and you are all set. We've got the bolts off of this cover here to remove this. And here is, wow, that rod is completely bent up. What I think, completely bent up. Huh, I've never seen one like that before. That's a rod that's supposed to go through there. It's not supposed to be bent. Got your flywheel here, your chain. Let's see if we can pull that off now. Get this out of the way. All right, then we're going to pull this flywheel.